Sisters and brothers, Awainosiemi, Pastor Melo speaking. In the name of Tatanzambia Mazulu, creator of heavens and earth, the one who anointed me to be your servant and to get you prepared to go back to Zion, Congo Diantotela, Luvuvamu, peace be with you. Today is Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021, and we are making our 52nd video. The theme is Kuvu, the Bantu Pharaoh. Kuvu, the Bantu Pharaoh. Christ, Kuswa Congo, called the devil the greatest liar that ever existed. John 8:44 says, "You belong to your father the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding the truth, for there's no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies." In this context, Europeans have designated themselves over the centuries as the sons and daughters of the evil one, not by their color, but by their actions. Massacre of innocent populations, colonization, characterized by theft, rape and plunder, slavery, and above all, blatant lies. Among these lies stands the biggest in human history. The Europeans indeed decided one day that ancient Egypt did not belong to Africa, but to a pseudo-Asian civilization. To succeed in this incredible crime, what they did was to change the name of this country, which wouldn't exist without the Nile, a river born in Central Africa. Those who studied hieroglyphics know that the name Egypt never existed for the pharaohs of the great dynasties. In fact, this word was invented to confuse the minds of people. We must go to the etymology of the name Egypt to see that. For more than 2 millennia, the name of Egypt was Kemet or Kemet, named after Noah's second son, the famous Ham or Shem. Genesis chapter 10:1. This is the account of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, Noah's sons, who themselves had sons after the flood. This is amply confirmed in two passages of the Bible. Psalm 105, verses 23 and 27. Then Israel entered Egypt. Jacob resided as a foreigner in the land of Ham. They performed his signs among them, his wonders in the land of Ham. In this case, the question arises, but where does the name Egypt come from? The term Aiguptos comes from the Greek idiom. The Greeks themselves borrowed this word from the Egyptian Hut Kapta, home of the god of Ptah, which designated Memphis, the capital of ancient Egypt. Recall that in Egyptian mythology, Ka is the vital energy and the spiritual double that is born at the same time as a human being. As for Ptah, it means the one who creates, equivalent to the Kikongon Semi. He is the god of craftsmen, artists, and architects. What we must remember, though, is that the Egyptians never referred to themselves as Aiguptos, but as Kemet, which means black people. We will now see that with the help of linguistics, it is easy to establish a link between the Bantu and ancient Egypt. Indeed, the name Kam, Chem, Ham, whatever the spelling you attribute to it, comes directly from the Kikongo Wama, whose past participle, Kema, is found in Latin in cremare, at the origin of French words crémation and crematorium. It means to burn and joins in this sense the Greek word Ethiopia, from aitho, to burn, and ops, face. This is why the word Africa doesn't exist in old maps. The entire sub-Saharan region is referred to as Ethiopia. Therefore, if the name Kemet derives from the Congo, further evidence is provided that in reality this language is not only very ancient but asserts its supremacy over languages such as Greek, Latin, or Hebrew. Wama, Kema, unquestionably establish a link between the civilization of ancient Egypt and the Bantus. Note that the Leucoderm enslavers, by systematically stripping our sisters and brothers from the diaspora of their African names, obliging them to bear European names, demonstrate that the name is the strongest, most obvious link between an individual and her origin, his, her roots. Should Europeans have allowed our brothers and sisters in the diaspora to keep their genuine names, the latter would very easily have found the country or region of Africa from which the ancestors had been taken. In this context, when Napoleon arrived in Egypt, one of his ambitions was to confirm the superiority of the white race over the so-called colored races. However, as he gazed with fear and trembling on the famous Sphinx, one of the most stupendous monuments in human history, classified among the seven wonders of the ancient world, he immediately disillusioned. Indeed, the features of this pharaoh, ruler of the fourth dynasty, were, according to Senegalese professor Cheikh Anta Diop, unquestionably Bantu. If we add to these physical characteristics the real name of this pharaoh, there is no longer any doubt. In fact, always in the sense of expropriating black Africans of their legitimate heritage, the Europeans put under the carpet the real name of this pharaoh, which is Khufu or Kuvu, and gave him a typically Greek name, Keops. The European scholars subsequently made every effort so that Kuvu disappears in the benefit of Keops. No one has ever been able to convey the meaning of this pharaoh's name just because they were looking in the wrong direction. When the Portuguese first landed on the African coast in Congodian Totela, the name of the king who received them with open arms was Nzinga Kuvu, according to Portuguese annals. However, Kuvu is an alteration of Nkuwu, which means one who holds the sovereign scepter. Nkuwu unquestionably matches the following biblical passage: Judah is a young lion. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the sovereign star from between his feet. Genesis 49 9 to 10. Nkuwu is therefore the Ngadi, from the Congo verb yala, to reign, to lead, to dominate, from which derives the term Ngudi, Judah. The fact that Judah in the Bible has the lion as a totem creates a link between the Congo king Nzinga Kuvu and the pharaoh Kuvu Keops, whose monument is a Bantu head on a lion's body. Remember that lion in Lingala, the language spoken in the Democratic Republic of Congo, is Nkoyi, whose phoneme is close to Nkuwu. But let's go straight to what interests us most: the link between Congo, Egypt, and Isolele, Israel. Certainly from his earliest childhood, Moses, the father of the nation of Isolele, had before his eyes the image carved in granite of Kuvu, Keops, the pharaoh with Bantu features and lion's body. It is logical to imagine that Moses himself, brought up in the court of Pharaoh, was an Egyptian by his culture and by his physical characteristics. Let's go to Exodus chapter 2, verses 18 to 19. When the girls returned to Reuel, their father, he asked them, "Why have you returned so early today?" They answered, "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock." They were talking about Moses. Acts chapter 7:21 says, Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was powerful in speech and action. Over 1,000 years later, the Apostle Paul was also mistaken for an Egyptian, which confirms the consistency of the Israelites' skin color. As the soldiers were about to take Paul into the barracks, he asked the commander, "May I say something to you?" "Do you speak Greek?" he replied. "Honor to you, the Egyptian who started a revolt and led 4,000 terrorists out into the wilderness some time ago." Acts chapter 21, verse 37 to 38. If two emblematic characters of the Bible, Moses in the Ancient Testament and Paul in the New Testament, were taken for Egyptians, if the Egyptian, as demonstrated by the example of Pharaoh Kuvu, had Bantu connections, Moses and Paul themselves would be considered today as Bantu, which makes the idea that Kuswa in Kikongo, Yuswa in Hebrew, Jesus in Greek, Jesus in English is a Bantu more obvious, less absurd than it seems at first glance. Kuswa being the root of Nkosi, which means lion, hence is established a link between Kuvu, the pharaoh with human head and body of lion. Thus, from only the science called semiology, one can easily establish a link between Congo, Egypt, and Isolele. Kwama, Kema, to burn, burnt, is the origin of the real name of ancient Egypt, Kamit. Kufu, Nkuwu, king, leader, chief, is a Congo name that is found in one of the most famous pharaohs of Egypt. Maza, Moses, is a Congo name at the basis of Judaism, which normally should be called Jadism in honor of its true and original roots. Hence, from only the science called semiology, one can easily establish a link between Congo, Egypt, and Isolele. Kwama, Kema, to burn, burnt, is the origin of the real name of ancient Egypt, Kemet. Kuvu, Kuvu, king, leader, chief, is a Congo name that is found in ancient Egypt, in one of the most famous pharaoh ever. Maza, Moses, is a Congo name at the basis of Judaism, which normally should be called Jihadism in honor of its true and original roots. Paul, taken from Paulo, is a Congo name meaning one who has been purified, washed. Paul is the one without whom Christianity certainly wouldn't exist. Kosua, the Anointed One, from which Yusua, Yehoshua, Jesus, Jesus are derived, is a Congo name at the origin of the word in Kisi, anointing. Kisi gave Christ. So, the circle is complete, sisters and brothers. Congo de Antotela is the kingdom of Kuswa, Nkosi, the lion of the tribe of Nyadi, the king of kings. Ingeta, Pastor Melo.
C'est loué, c'est loué, c'est loué. Eh, monongele, lusala